All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into, well, one of the biggest, oldest, and most personal questions humanity has ever asked. No, really, just think about that for a second. What is it that makes you, you? It's not just your body, right? Or your name, or what you do for a living. There's something else, that core feeling of being you, with your own unique consciousness, your hopes, your thoughts. Well, for basically all of human history, we've had a word for that essential non-physical part of us, the soul. It's a word we hear all the time, but what does it actually mean? That's what we're going to dig into today. We'll look at this one idea from a few totally different angles. Okay, so let's start our journey with that eternal question. First things first, we need to get on the same page. What are we even talking about when we say the word soul? Okay, so here's the classic definition. Think of it like this. The soul is the pilot of the plane. It's not the wings or the engine, the physical stuff. It's the non-physical essence that's in charge of everything. Life, consciousness, thoughts, feelings, your whole personality. It's the thing that makes the whole machine go. And that's our baseline. So let's look at this through our first lens, faith and philosophy. I mean, for thousands of years, this was really the only way people thought about the soul. It wasn't a question, it was just a fundamental truth, a non-physical reality. This quote right here from the philosopher René Descartes, it pretty much sums up a huge chunk of Western thinking. It's an idea called dualism. And it's simple, really. You're made of two totally separate things. You've got your body, the physical machine, and then you've got your mind, or your soul. You know, the famous ghost in the machine. And you see this idea of a separate soul pop up in so many world religions, but wow, the details are fascinatingly different. So take Christianity and Islam. Both see the soul, or the ruh in Islam, as this unique eternal essence given by God, which eventually faces judgment. But then you look at Hinduism and you've got the Atman. It's also an eternal self, but the goal isn't judgment, it's reunion. It's about merging back into the cosmic everything, which they call Brahman. And then just to mix things up completely, you have Buddhism. The concept of anatta is basically no soul. It says there's no permanent, unchanging you. It's more like a river, a constant flow of consciousness from one moment to the next. Okay, deep breath. We are now going to do a complete 180. We're taking off the glasses of faith and philosophy and putting on a totally different pair, the lens of science, of empiricism. So, how does science tackle this exact same question? What makes you, you? Well, the very first thing you notice is that scientists, they just don't use the word soul. From a scientific point of view, it's just not a useful term. It's not something you can measure or test. So instead, they break down what we mean by soul into smaller, observable pieces. They talk about consciousness, our sense of self, our mind, our personality. These are things they can actually study. And for a neuroscientist, all of those things, your personality, who you are, your memories, that feeling of being you, it's all happening right here, inside your head. It's not seen as something separate. It's an emergent property, a product of the ridiculously complex dance of neurons firing and chemicals flowing in your brain. So this brings us to the million-dollar question, maybe the billion-dollar question. If the soul really is a separate, non-physical thing, like so many traditions believe, has science ever found a shred of evidence for it? You know, any proof at all that consciousness can exist without the brain? And the answer, from the purely scientific perspective, is a big, fat zero. Nada, zilch, within the rules of science, where you have to be able to measure and test things in the physical world. There is currently zero empirical evidence that a consciousness, a mind, a self can exist without a physical, functioning brain. Okay, so it feels like we have two completely opposite answers, right? A clash of worlds. But here's the thing. This isn't about picking a winner. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about understanding why they arrive at such different conclusions. And it all boils down to the kind of questions each one is asking. And really, it's this simple. The spiritual and philosophical lens is asking why. Why are we here? What's the meaning of it all? It's a search for purpose. The scientific lens is asking how. How does this brain create consciousness? What are the mechanics? See? They're not even trying to answer the same question. It's like one is asking for the meaning of a poem, and the other is analyzing the ink and paper it's written on. They're both valid, just different games. So, where do we land after all this? We're kind of left staring at this huge, enduring mystery. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the power of this idea isn't in finding a simple answer, but in the question itself. All right, let's recap the big takeaways. We've seen that the soul is this massive concept without one single definition. For faith and philosophy, it's often this eternal, non-physical thing. For science, it breaks down into things like consciousness, which are seen as products of the brain. Critically, science has found no hard evidence for a soul that's separate from the brain. And that leads to the most important takeaway of all. The answer you get totally depends on the lens you're looking through.
You know, when you step back, maybe the real value of the soul as a concept isn't about finding a definitive answer. Maybe its power lies in what it stands for. It's a symbol of our species' eternal quest to figure out who we are, why we're here, and what, if anything, comes next.
And that throws the ball right back in your court, doesn't it? We've looked through the lens of faith, of philosophy, of science. But in the end, there's one lens left. Yours. This is one of the most personal questions you can ever ask. So, what does the soul mean to you? Thanks for thinking it through with me on The Explainer.